Well, I think that we may start. We are almost 50 people attending the webinar right now, half of the number of registered. So that's good. More people will get inside. Um, well, welcome everyone to a new webinar from the Data-Driven Webinar Series, an initiative launched by Hanadata. I'm Mario De Francisco, CEO of Data, a new data governance solution with an innovative and disruptive vision and approach. And we come today on a really special guest as a speaker, Peter Kapur. Peter is founder of True North Data, a boutique advisory firm in the US, and he has been working a lot of years in data strategy, data governance, being CTO of large companies like DTCC or AIG and other banks. And he's going to speak today about best practices to operationalize data strategy, what he called data governance 2.0. You may write your questions using the chat, okay, during the whole session, and we may answer at any time. So don't be shy and just ask the questions you need. Peter, I'll give you your turn right now, and please go ahead with the webinar. Thank you very much to everyone. You need to turn the audio on, Peter.
That is an excellent point. Thank you.
Go on.
Thank you, Mario, and good afternoon to everyone. And thanks to Mario for giving me this opportunity to discuss a topic I've been passionate about. And as far as disruptive, I've been disruptive about data governance since it started, because my beginnings were always in data delivery. And I always had thoughts about how data governance was not really being used to its truest nature. I would really like to discuss that. Happy to answer any questions that people may have in the chat. But what I'd like to do is discuss a different vision of data governance that I've always implemented. That is really taking data governance away from the 2008 crisis when it started to finally bringing it to data monetization and revenue optimization. And for a lot of folks, you know it, but the times you mention data monetization, you're always talking about creating products. No, it's really getting value out of your data. How do you get value out of your data? And data governance, for all you folks, is a great discipline. Don't let anybody else tell you that. Unfortunately, that has not always kept up its promise. Let's see, hold on. Now, the fact of the matter is there is a lot of hype about data. Everywhere you see, you talk about data. Unfortunately, a bad acronym, data is the new oil. Obviously, that crashed. But the question there is, only a small percentage of organizations are actually winning with information governance. And that's a fact. I've been in companies, I see that. You can call these small, and a lot of times, obviously, companies internally may call it wins. But the point is, if you're not actually using your data within a data-driven culture and getting value out of your data, you cannot call it a success. Question is why data governance is seen as a theoretical, expensive exercise. Despite billions and multiple iterations, there are many companies that have gone through multiple iterations of data governance, and they still end up with, at the most, it's okay. But the business mostly does not want data governance in the room, unless it is obviously for purposes for security and privacy. I've always looked at the aspect that data governance is an enabler, and we have an extended thought of data governance as really something that the business should embrace. And I always had success with that. And what I'd like to do is share with you my thoughts on it. And I always say, this is hazardous to your data governance 1.0 or BAU. That is not sometimes the industry held perspective on it. And we can talk further, we'll talk further about why that is the case. Now for data governance 2.0, I think each one of you are innovative. Your discipline, your practice should also be innovative. When you go into a room, people shouldn't hide. You shouldn't have to put a mask other than for COVID. You should be invited to say, you are a data governance professional. Come and help us in our data solutions. Rather than be somebody who is coming in because they're forced to come in for reasons. I always go back now using apples, because I always thought that was a wonderful, wonderful ad. It says, think different. I ask you folks to think different. Humor me on this, because we've been trying to do the same thing for 10, 12 years, and things have not progressed in companies other than a minority. And I think a lot of you, I'm sure a lot of you are among those minority, the fact that you think different. And it always goes back, if you saw the movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where it says, give me a word and I'll find the root of the word to Greek. I look at it, give me any defensive data governance use, and I will find a way where it will be a winning strategy. You can bring it back to reusing what you're doing for governance. Governance should never be used purely for meeting regulatory, and if it is, it should be used in an efficient way. How did we get here? Let's face it, data governance historically is focused on compliance and regulations, and which is perfectly fine, but that is only one avenue. And I'm just putting a definition of data governance. And you notice in there, it's defining authority, control, manage, protect, which is perfectly fine. Nowhere does it say it's actually going to be helping you to rationalize your data, monetize your data, or be involved in your data strategy. That's because DG1O came to prominence in the aftermath of the financial crisis. The intent was to satisfy regulators. I was there. I was involved in it, sitting in the Federal Reserve at that point. And what we were doing is putting together frameworks which the regulators said, yep, that looks good, that looks good. And that was the intent of it. BCBS 239, Sarbanes, all of them were really intended to be frameworks to keep the regulators at bay. Unfortunately, EDM policies and standards, many of them really guidances and practices were intermingled with corporate legal and compliance. Corporate legal and compliance policies you must follow. Those have legal implications. Unfortunately, naming EDM policies as policies gives them a different connotation. And the industry, I think, benefited early on from the fact that it was EDM policies, therefore everybody had to follow it. But if you don't operationalize it, it gets to be a problem. Similarly, you had frameworks created, DAMA, DIMBOK, assessments, DCAM, DMM, good frameworks, but they're all should be kept in perspective. But the frameworks policies are limited and no offensive business value. The intent was not to help in the discovery of assets. It was not to operationalize it. The intent was to control, where the intent was security. Not a bad intent. Obviously, privacy, data protection were added to framework, especially with GDPR. And I was involved in leading GDPR, very important initiative. But I still looked at it as an opportunity to operationalize data governance than a pure privacy perspective. The result of all of this was the DC 1.0 framework with policies and procedures we use across industries. Even ones that were not impacted by 2008, the frameworks were essentially coming from 2008 and were tweaked. Also, most of the time it was a representation of how business was done. There was actually at that point there was a limited link to the actual representation of data and data assets. It's mostly a survey. By the way, feel free to disagree. I think a lot of people would disagree with this. Now, data governance, one of industry best practices, ended up limited operationalization, was isolated from the business, data innovation, and big data. Basically, was thought as a policeman. And the reason data governance was kept away from these initiatives, other than being forced into it, because the perception is data governance is something coming into control is going to give us a large bureaucracy, which is not going to have value. Theoretical is something I've heard because I've gone into the industry. I've taken a lot of times. I've actually gone into shops where they've told me, okay, we've spent millions and tens of millions of dollars, and it's not been operationalized. In some cases, they don't even want us in the same room. And when I've had discussions with them, they say, because the data governance folks don't understand what we're doing. We have a real job to do. And it really ended up being a disconnect. And the goal to create a data culture is never going to happen unless you bring in the existing producers and consumers into your ecosystem. While data governance hummed along on the financial crisis frameworks, let's face it, we all know data monetization, data analytics, data science took over. Companies said, hey, listen, at the end of it, our job is to make money. You know, a company that's making 100 million in revenue is not going to be able to spend 200 million on data governance without any revenue aspects to it. When CDOs have really gone and said, okay, we're going to be spending X amount, whether it's for privacy and all, the CEO is going to think twice about it unless they are in under some regulatory. Now, also, if you think about initially in the start of data governance, it attracted mostly IT governance professionals, which were focused on security and the governance of IT. And therein sometimes lies the confusion. Data governance is not IT governance. Data governance is not a compliance. But now it's attracting people like yourself who actually want to do things differently, want to be a disruptive force, and that's not a bad thing. At the end of it, Apple, Google, all of them disrupted, but they would not have disrupted things without thinking different. Companies are going through data monetization, business data transformation, data analytics, data science. And my passion has always been data governance components are very important to supporting those. But the reason they don't get in is because it's not supportive. Data governance comes across as sometimes we shall do it. To me, it's a partnership. And I've actually had discussions with CTOs, CDOs, CIOs to say, let's start changing that paradigm. Data governance can help you in offense. It's happening in some. Now, I see that companies are actually changing the name of data governance because it's got a bad reputation. But honestly, potato, at the end of it's data governance. You can call it data intelligence, data enablement, which is all fine. Absolutely. You can get data intelligence out of it. But you have to rehabilitate data governance and say, there's nothing wrong with data governance. The components of it, the lineage aspect of it, it's not the labels. It's the approach, mindset, and culture that need to focus not purely on data control, on data democratization, thinking strategic value, focusing on tangible business value delivery. After all, data governance is not an end, it's a means to an end. What I have seen data governance become the end itself, where they say, okay, I've done data governance, I found nirvana. No. If you actually have not solved the problem, you have not succeeded. Standards, frameworks are essential, but they really should not sit in isolation. You need to always test them to say, are they actually helping me to deliver? The end result has to be a form of delivery. And delivery can mean different things. To me, I always say, data governance 2.0. I know Gartner, they talk about 3.0, 4.0, but to me, it's the approach. It's really generation 2. We're hardly at 1.5. It has nothing to do with the catalogs. It's really an approach. Thinking different, thinking of the possibilities of using the components of data governance. I have a different take on data governance. Anybody who wants to jump off the chair and disagree, feel free to. To me, data governance is a discipline to support an organization's data strategy, data monetization, consistent with data regulations. Absolutely, it contains the people, process, and technologies required to meet those objectives. Your objectives are not to meet regulations. Your objectives should be data strategy, data monetization, support, while you effectively meet data regulations. It's a thought process and a paradigm change from governing minds to governing data. And the reason I say that in governing minds, I've been in organizations where people have said, oh, the data governance folks are here. Let's just hide. They really aren't here to help us do data analytics. They're basically going to tell us things that either we don't understand, don't want to understand, or spend days doing. That's not a data culture. Data culture is really bringing people in. And I think I've been deeply involved with privacy security, very important in today's age. But it must be embedded with a change of focus from lockdown to changing the paradigm. How do I make data available? Years back, I put together a set of the rise of the data citizen and data citizens' Bill of Rights, specifically because I believed that data governance needs to be inclusive and collaborative. And the data citizen needs to be able to participate in it. Every data citizen has a right to make governing data an enabler. It's not something on a thou shall that works in church for a while. Nah, not always that good over there. Yeah. But every data citizen has a right to be part of creating data management best practices. All data citizens without limitation have a right to a governance experience that's natural and straightforward. The right to be a data innovator. This is the age of data innovation. Time to take off your masks and join the revolution. Data governance is an enabler. Every data citizen, if folks are running data governance organizations, need to start thinking about how you engage your data citizens. Let them come up with their ideas to you. If you purely look at it as a defensive, you will not have people participate and give you ideas. It's the current set of people who know the data best, your data citizens, that will give you the ideas how to improve it. I use this pyramid because I talk about data governance 2.0, operationalization, adoption, and enabling business innovation. Really needs to move from a pure policy standards, control, enterprise glossary. The thing that gets my eye sometimes actually is the enterprise business glossary. 10, 12 years, that was a great idea at the center of data governance. It still is good, but it's purely a component. I've seen people keep KPIs of how many business terms they had. That's not relevant. Not relevant unless it's in the context of a domain or subject matter. Question is, have you operationalized this? Is it something that the business is going to jump up in the air? You need to have a business partner that says, yes, they are focusing on using data governance to achieve my delivery. It never should be a data governance lead. It should be partnering with the governance to operationalize data governance within initiatives that are important to the business, to privacy, to security. And I always look at the Agile Manifesto. Yes, absolutely. The policy, standards, control is very important, but you need value items in the right. If you have 100 standards, but you've operationalized 2 of them, that's not a passing grade. So you need to rethink that perspective of it. And I know that this is a different take on it, but it's more, how do you operationalize it? How do you really partner with the business? By the way, feel free if you have any questions in the chat or you disagree, and also it'd be good to really understand what people feel in their companies, whether they feel data governance is viewed as an enabler or it's viewed as honestly something to stop people from doing things. To me, it really starts early at the EDM mission. I've seen the mission policy missions for governance written that would bore the crap out of a business. Why would the business even care about a data policy if it has nothing to do with what they need to do from a KPI perspective? If data science and analytics is important to the business, it should actually be embedded in your mission statements to say, we consider that extremely important. We consider data democratization important. We consider analytics and a collaborative environment, because putting that in your actual mission is changing already the way people will think of you. A lot of companies, when I will go in and say, you can change the perception. And a lot of times I've been fortunate, I would say, humor me. I may not, that I do believe that I am here to help you implement governance for your strategic needs. That opens the doors for me. And that would open the doors for you if you look at it from the perspective of your internal clients. I've had these discussions with CTOs, CIOs in terms of how do you bring analytics and data science into the mix? If you look at one statistic, half of data science projects actually never make it to production because they're also being run one-off. And the reason they don't actually show up at the doorsteps of data governance is they feel that's elongated. They're going to tell us to put a business term in, and that's really not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about finding real data, a real model that is going to help the company make money. For companies, making money is not a bad thing, right? And I know purists will say data governance is really governing the data. We should not think about that. If you don't think about it, why would the business actually want to work with you? They are there to help increase the revenue of a company or reduce the costs. Get used to it. Get used to it, and you will be at the parties. You need to think of data governance. Think of helping to produce products. When you get the product analytics, when Apple thinks of how data governance is, they don't think of controlling. They're looking at how do I maximize my revenue because now I've created a new Apple TV source, or I've created new services. Why? Because I'm doing the data science to find out what data, what my clients are doing. And data governance can be very important into that. Every innovative company has data governance. They won't call it. They'll embed it within that. You look at Amazon, fantastic use case of how they're using data. They use data governance? Absolutely. You want to be able to say, I'm a data innovator who is going to use data governance components to help product. I look at it as these are the old data governance frameworks. This is where the mindset change comes in to your data governance frameworks. In Data Governance 1.0, the metrics are based on things that matter to data folks. How many elements did I put in? How many terms did I do it? It was we shouldn't be sending our business end users to data governance school. We really should be focusing on making things easier for them. Data Governance 1.0 was you put in a whole set of standards. You hired a high-paying management consulting firm that put in a whole bunch of standards. A lot of paper, electronic, digital, so it's a lot cheaper to keep in storage. And the business, quote-unquote, business outcome was a general value. You implemented a governance tool and you said, yes, let's have a party. Metrics, again, were metrics that matter to data folks. Your KPIs in terms of how many business rules you had, how many did, but it didn't really do any metrics in terms of how it actually helped the business. There was none of that. And I think we've talked about partly the assessments. Assessments are exactly based on, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? Sending them to school. Schools, yeah, again, a good thing. But the business doesn't want to be sent to school. Business value? Not really. It was an afterthought. And again, purists will tell you the intent of data governance is not business value. Well, I'm asking you to be the minority that says, I want to provide business value to my business because I actually want to be a partner. And I want to change that perception of the business. I've never had a problem changing the perception of the business. Yes, the biggest challenge I've had is more from an industry perspective, where they'll say, that's not data governance. That's data management. That's it. Honestly, it doesn't matter. At the end of it, you need to deliver business value. Data governance tool, realigning the data governance value paradigm. Now, as I see through the industry, I talk to CDOs, CEOs, part of data governance tool is already underway. companies are actually embedding data governance into data strategy and analytics. They are not isolating data governance because they've realized it doesn't work in its isolation. Unfortunately, most of the industry still is not aligned. I see a lot of changes to it. You notice people are talking about business value, but it's more than a label. First, think of one part is you have general policies and standards. Absolutely, good thing. I think on legal perspective, even from an overall guiding perspective, you should have general policies and standards that should be followed as due diligence. But then you need to start thinking about the business outcome. With the business, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to deliver? What is the tangible business value? I know that's blasphemy to ask that question in data governance, but it really is tangible. Every business is always trying to have a tangible business value. Your job is to figure that out and align your data governance practices to it. I think a key part of this is a flexible business architecture to understand the implementability. You need to think about it may be a new thing to say, how do I take this and implement governance structures that actually are going to help me to deliver on the business outcome? Rather than say, I'm going to take a hammer and hit all the nails. Metadata is an important aspect, and I've talked to you about it. I'm glad to see now metadata has become extremely important. But the key point in metadata is, folks, it's got to be, the UX has to be as good for the end business users. Don't send them to school. Once you understand what your flexible business, how you're going to implement it in your high level, you look at what standards are appropriate for this business outcome. It can't always be thought of as that I need to be able to provide a lineage. I need to be able to provide a glossary. It's more about what's the business outcome? How do I go about doing this? Tools come after that. Once you are able to understand that, you're now focusing on the usage and adoption and operationalization. As much as that's difficult to say, at the end of it, it's about adoption and operationalization of tools. Otherwise, there's a lot of tools in companies that are sitting on the shelf. Lesson number one: never buy into a vendor's data vision for you. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. You need to question it, right? They're different agendas. Tools must solve real business problems, not general ones, as in, that's really best practice. That's the way you should do it. Yeah, that has value. But to the business, if along with that, you can solve a real business problem for them. An example, when you talk, in GDPR, there was a real business problem to be solved. There were business flows that were needed. But that actually was also enabling. There were many components enabling. And you've gone into where companies have tried to implement a data registration system across the company. But you need to look at it business to say, how is this catalog? How is this rollout going to solve my problem for this line of business so that I can actually engage with them? To me, it's always about business value, collaboration, adoption, and operationalization. An important thing is metadata is there to bring all of this together. The key parts of it together. So you can build a connected universe. Every initiative that you do should add to your reusable data assets. If you have a tool that doesn't do that, or a methodology that doesn't do that, dump it or rethink your approach. It's really, a lot of it has to do with approach. Rethinking the approach to say every initiative, whether it is a control initiative, is going to help me create reusable data assets. And very importantly, bring the existing data producers who know the data. They need to be brought in. I've seen people now, catalog is the rage. If you actually don't bring in the application producers or the businesses who give a crap about the catalog, then it's like having a party and nobody showing up. It's one of those COVID-19 parties. Another aspect that I am passionate about is data stewardship. And I actually have always defined it differently. I look at it as operationalizing data stewards. A lot of people do ask me, what the hell does that mean? Because they're used to the book aspect of a data steward. To me, data stewards are the important source, the important aspect of how data governance tool gets operationalized. Data stewardship has historically, when it started off, it was more about maintaining business terms, but it's really about data assets. Understanding your data assets, being the glue between IT and the business, being involved in initiatives. To me, I look at data stewards as leaders in a company to build a data culture. If data stewards are purely put into a siloed role, you're missing an opportunity. And you're missing an opportunity to get innovative people to be data stewards. To me, when I've actually, in the past, when I've run data organizations, I've had to motivate people. I say, come on, everybody, volunteer to be a data steward. You need data stewards across your data assets and through your different layers to be able to understand the business, to be able to change it. And that's why I say make data stewardship real to the business. It's more than metadata in business terms. God knows people have written books and all about it. And that's one of the reasons I don't write books. It is you can't be stuck with something you wrote years ago. To me, I look at it, I learn every time I learn something new. It's a new approach. Data stewards, if nurtured correctly, are in the best position to work with operational business users to offer new ideas. Give them the respect that they deserve. Embed data stewardship into initiatives, especially process and data quality. Data quality isn't real to the business. Don't crowd it with other things, and make sure the whole aspect of roles and responsibilities is embedded in data quality. If you look at data quality, it is really about figuring out how I can catch data issues early on. How instead of having five people go after a problem, I have one data steward who can actually, I can get the roles and responsibilities of resolution early on. And very importantly, they must be involved in the maturation of your data asset catalog. And they're the people that should know what's important to put in a catalog. God knows for 20 years, people have been trying to dump everything into a catalog. And my aspect is, sure, you'll get all the data there and all your metadata there. And now tell me what you're going to do with it first. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but tell me what you're going to do with it first. Guess who knows? Who should know the answer to that? The data stewards who work with the business owners. Yes, data catalog is the rage, but again, it's important to get intelligent data catalogues. Yeah. Data governance was way too manual with data governance 1.0 tools. Time to move to a tool where the tools are really automated. They're telling you what to do. They are. It's really an exception-based process. Your catalog and your governance should become exception-based. I remember years they say, okay, now we're going to put in one business term, we're going to put in one data element. Guys, by that time, you're going to have grandkids. It ain't happening. If you really want to make data governance real to the business, make sure you've got the right embedded AI and ML to be able to automate your governance task. To be able to know automatically when you have a new element coming in, this looks like this. Maybe this is the governance rule that should be applied to it, and automatically route it to say, hey, Mr. Steward, what do you think? Instead of having to go through the entire aspect and all. The whole aspect of discovery and ML becomes important there. Being able to give it business names, all of this can be very well automated in ML. Folks, anybody has questions? Just final thoughts about data governance 2.0. Focus on operationalization. Create governance structures and standards that push innovation. And when I mean governance structures, even there, I have an opinion on the how data governance councils need to be. If you don't have a component that is the middle and the practitioners, not going to be sustainable. And move from a one-size top-down to a building blocks. Solve a problem for the business, build a reusable asset. And as you talk, data stewardship is a key component. But rethink data stewardship. And again, get invited to the parties. There's a famous thing Groucho Marx once said, I would never want to be part of a club that wants me. Be different. It's okay. Right? And sometimes we're motivated, whatever things you think about Steve Jobs. You look at some of the videos about him, he really thought different. Hey, data governance components must solve a tangible problem for the business. If you really want them interested, you really want them operationalized, find out how you can contribute to the solving of the problem. Data governance is not going to solve all of it, but there are many data governance components that you will work. And then the key part is data governance and the CDO should be the chief collaborator, bringing together data architecture, bringing together privacy, bringing them all together in an implementable framework. And at the end of it, it's execution, folks. Anybody has any questions? Again, feel free. And folks, thanks so much. This is a passion with me, and I want to thank Mario. I'm so fortunate actually to have found Mario. He has a real passion on it, and anybody that has a passion to think different, I welcome their thoughts. Be more than happy to get into a dialogue with you, because I am a firm believer that collectively we solve problems. Nobody knows anything more than anybody else. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your explanation about data governance 2.0. We have some questions on the right side on the chat. For example, Antonio Pose was asking about examples of KPIs to define that we may define to measure the business value. Not the. I think that Antonio refers not the usual metrics or KPIs about number of terms, number of governed assets, number of relations, number of data owners, and so on, but when you refer about these KPIs to measure the real business value, well, give us some examples. Yeah, it's you are in mute right now, Peter.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So look at it from an aspect of a real business data asset, something that means something to the business, and build your KPIs around it. A data asset could be in your business. It could be, let's say, clients, right? It's a data asset. A client to say how you can properly identify clients, and you want to be able to put KPIs around that. So therefore, your business definition becomes a sub KPI towards to say, we want to achieve, let's say, client 360, client 360. We want to be able to see client satisfaction around our data asset here. And put all your KPIs in terms of, do you have the definitions for the data assets? Do you have the technical assets related to the data asset? But really start with your business data asset and go with that. Not really, the number of data stewards is less important than have you defined data stewards in your value chain of that asset. So just take an example of data of client. You know that a client has a life cycle. So therefore, during the life cycle, you will need to put data stewardship during that life cycle to be able to reduce maybe client errors, to be able to get better data and all. So make your KPIs more in terms of the relevant stewards, the technical stewards that are involved in it.
And relating to this question, David Cano asked about how to predict the impact, because you may define this KPI, for example, for client retention, or how we may stretch the way from a prospect to a real customer.
Yeah.
That's a KPI that we may be looking at, but how we may predict or how we may measure the impact, the real impact of the data governance to this KPI.
And that, for example, in this case, you're talking about keep track of what your business user really wants. Are they really looking at, in this case, let's say it's a client MDM, are they really looking at to cross-sell, share data between different perspectives? So you can put your KPIs there. Do they have data sharing agreements? That's a key here, because basically what you've done there is you're saying you're sharing data across businesses to be able to do cross-selling. That sort of thing brings the business into the picture. And let me answer actually on, Michelle had a question. You are right. Most companies are not Google. Most companies are not Amazon. I'm thinking more about an innovation thought process, about thinking on an offense perspective. When you're solving, it's more about if you're solving for a defensive purpose, think about how you can create reusable assets for other parts of your business. It's more of an offensive mindset. And the reason I mentioned data products and all in there is because companies like Google have data governance too, but they do it more thought. But even within your company, what you can do is start thinking of it from a perspective of how else can I help? How does this go a little beyond? And more tying it to say, okay, now I've created an application, excuse me, an application inventory, let's just say. Can somebody actually use that? Can I actually work with the science folks to have them open the door I actually joined the company to help, and first thing I found out was that data governance the data science folks did not want data governance near at all. I said, gee, that's a problem. But there are components you can help even within the Dharma circle to say, you know what, we in data governance will take responsibility, and you need to work with your management for helping you with sourcing external data. Most of data science, which I consider to be offense analytics, has to do with sourcing internal and external data. You can apply and be help to support that perspective. So now what you've done is you have actually helped support a business that is doing offense. So so it's not really about a company obviously having come, but try to join to the offense of a company. Sorry, you had a question? Yeah. Mario, you had another question? Yeah, I just, to me, that's why I say, it's more of a thought of a mindset. And I think a lot of the stuff that we have for Dharma, there's some very important frameworks. Now, the question I ask is that take the frameworks and see how those apply to your offensive business.
Yeah, I think, for example, the example about the clients, it's really good for everyone to understand, because as long as you may measure these KPIs attached or related to your client retention or to a new generation of clients, or this cross-selling part. For example, if you have an organization split in different products, and they are measuring the KPIs for the clients related to these products, but you want a client to buy more products from your company or from your organization. But are you sharing this information between products or between departments or through the organization for the user, for the data owner, for the data steward, to give mechanisms and tools to the scientist, for example, to give a better approach to the customer? It's something really, really important, and that's about reusability of data, and about data sharing and data democratization.
And let me give you an example. In the insurance industry, so it's for commercial data governance, right? And to me, I figure out, what was important to the business, and this really requires an open mind. And I won't say it on this, but a colleague of mine 15 years back told me something, and that's why I try to listen more. Found out was data submission errors is a huge problem for them. So let's focus governance around data submission, because if an insurance company is not actually able to get the correct submission, they won't be able to underwrite. So that's an example of a real KPI, because if you're able to tie this to a real KPI, and you actually will get to implement all of Dharma. Because then if you're not actually in the party, if you're not invited, you won't be able to implement what's actually good for your users.
That's right. I totally agree with you, Peter. Well, I think that we've run out of time. So thank you very much for your participation, Peter, and thank you to all the attendees that get this webinar. And well, hope that we'll see you soon in the next one. Remember that this data-driven webinar series is an ongoing initiative launched by Hanadata, and we will be releasing different webinars with more special guest speaker to give you some examples, real world examples, or to share the knowledge about data governance and data strategy and so on. So thank you very much, and be safe.
And remember, data governance is an enabler for the business, not a disabler. Thank you.
Bye.